Masira ma'am, it's 15:05. So if that's fine with you, we can begin with it.
Yes, we can begin if you want to start.
All right, ma'am. Sabhi.
A very warm good afternoon. Alumni Association Student Wings of Government Law College, Mumbai, under the guidance of the principal, Ma'am Dr. Smita Mehta, and our faculty in charge, Mr. Umesh Aswar sir, and, and under the guidance of Ms. Sunita Masani ma'am, is delighted to announce an online lecture as part of our Young Achiever series, A Career as a Solicitor. We will like to welcome you all and look forward to an enriching session. We have with us Ms. Masira Shaikh, Advocate and Solicitor with a career in dispute resolution. We thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation. Ms. Shaikh graduated from Government Law College, Mumbai in 2020. In January 2021, she enrolled in the Bar Council of India. She has recently cleared her solicitor exam in her first attempt in February 2024. She is also a member of the Mumbai Central for International Arbitration. Today, we will to invite her to this event and seek her guidance on how to crack the solicitor examination. All the participants may post their questions in the chat.
Thank you so much for the introduction. See, you have joined today on a Sunday. I'm very. I know I was in GLC, so I'm happy to at least on the other end of it. Right? I will much aim to finish lecture within an hour, right? So I hope yes, like association, right? What we can do is I'll go through the lecture. I have the I was doing these answer as soon as. So let's begin. What is today's topic? It is solicitor's examination know-it-all. So the first thing you need to know is who is a solicitor and what are the examinations. Right? It's a very simple answer. we obviously take influence by the British law. That distinction between barrister. In today's terms, a solicitor is an attorney and a barrister is a counsel, right? In today, we're all advocates under the Advocates Act. But the title of solicitor still remains and it's recognized. So your obvious next question is, right? And that's a question that will be posed to you giving these examinations. Thing you can do. Simply, the only thing that you get essentially is the title. The other thing that you get is that if you pass these examinations, you can Nama and the Supreme. So you don't have to get an record examination. But in the circle of what you do if you're in you've done your 5-year course, you give your bar exam, you go into practice. You practice, right? When you give the examination, you're doing it for 2 reasons. The most important knowledge. These exams, everyone fully aware, you have done various internships, some of your law is vast. You might practice in a certain area, a few areas, but you will never be able to cover the entirety of law. These exams are as as you get, possibly. A fraternity within the legal community. It's a smaller group. It is a very tight-knit group, right? It's a good group to be a part of. There's a lot of intellectual debates that happen within the group. Now, the most important thing is that these exams happen twice in a year, right? And these are very, very comprehensive exams. Now, this group of solicitors are the people who will set your question paper and who will correct your question paper, right? So that's the most important thing. We will come later on in this lecture as to how you are supposed to write these papers. But now we have to understand what are these 6 papers, right? I would request Bridget actually to just share the syllabus. As they're sharing the syllabus, right? Let me just go through what I'm trying to explain. There are 6 papers. In each of the papers, right, there are various acts that you will have to study. Can we scroll down? Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, the BILS website doesn't work. So I'm not certain if everyone has the syllabus. However, I'll share the syllabus by the end of the lecture as well in the chat box. Now, we'll go through the papers just for everyone to have a fair understanding, because I understand that students who are even curious about it, who have no idea about what these examinations have joined, right? So let's go through the syllabus. Let's understand why there's this buzz around, right? These examinations are the toughest examinations, they're very difficult to crack, and we'll understand. Let me scare you in the start why they're so difficult, and then I'll ease you into why they're not so difficult, right? So if you can just zoom in a little bit. Thank you. Okay. So paper one, right? There are 6 papers. That doesn't mean there are only 6 acts. There are 6 papers. Each papers have various acts. Now, if you go through practice and procedure, you have CPC, you have commercial clothes, you have pleadings. Pleadings will predominantly have press. Then you have letters patent, you have constitution, you have the Bombay High Court original site rules, and then you have specific relief. This is so comprehensive, right? Even if you just take CPC, it's so difficult to cover CPC in practice in itself. However, when you're studying, you'll go from front to back, which is something you'll never be able to do. So this is your procedure part. So anyone who's interested in litigation, right, will scroll down. Yeah. So company law has 2 subjects predominantly. It's companies and IBC. In company law, you also have certain rules, right? And you have IBC. They go hand in hand. So predominantly, the majority of the paper will be company law, which is almost around 70-80 marks, and the rest will be IBC. However, this distinction is not always set. There can be 90% company and 10% IBC. The marks differ every year. Now, someone who's doing litigation, right, will not necessarily read that much company law or corporate law, right? The next paper also, if you see corporate law, has tax, SEBI, competition, and income tax. These 3 papers right now, what you understand by even going through these 3 papers is that it's vastly different, right? It's not only if you want to do litigation, it's not only if you want to do corporate or you want to do certain kind of civil matters. It ranges from one thing to another to a third thing, right? And that's the most intimidating and the best part about giving these examinations. I personally was afraid of income tax, and that sounds insane to be afraid of an act. But I would not really touch any matters with income tax, even when it came my way. I was obviously my partners forced me to be a part of those matters, so I got lucky that way. But in all honesty, there are certain subjects that will scare you, and these exams push you to studying them because you don't have a choice. We'll go to the other 3 papers. Scroll down. Conveyancing. Extremely important. We have drafting, deeds, right? There are various deeds that you'll have to go through. There is RERA, there is TOPA, there is MOFA, there is Registration Act, Succession Act, and Stamp Act, right? This is your conveyancing paper. In itself, you see there are 7-8 acts that you have to study for one paper. Go down. Commercial law will be Indian contract, Indian partnership, LLP Act, negotiable instrument and sale of goods. And then you have in General Act again, you have Public Trust, Indian Trust, Cooperative Societies Act, Rent Control, Apartment Ownership, Prevention Money Laundering Act, Arbitration, Limitation, and then you can stop projecting. If we've just gone through all of the acts, we've just gone through all of the papers, you'll understand the variety that you get to study, and that's a beautiful thing, right? You will never be able to practice all of it. The only time you'll be able to sit down and study is when you're giving these exams. So the journey of giving these exams is a lot more important than giving these exams, right? Now let's come to the 3 phases of what exactly these exams are about, right? We have the period before you sign your articles, then we have your period of articleship, and then you have your 6 month study break. So let me explain. When you start the journey of giving these examinations, you have to sign a 3-year articleship under another solicitor who has 5 years of experience, right? For that, either you can go to a person who's independently practicing, or you can go to a firm and sign under a partner or a senior associate, right, who is a solicitor. Now, before you give these examinations, the prerequisite is practice for 3 years. In these 3 years, 2.5 years, you will be practicing, And for the last 6 months, you'll get a study leave. So now let's come to pre. Before you sign your articleship, what exactly are you looking for in a firm? I did my articleship from IC Universal Legal, and the reason I went to IC Universal Legal is because of the variety of matters I was able to do. I was never restricted to one field. I was never only put into litigation or real estate or only certain kind of IBC matters. I was able to taste the flavor of everything, and which is why the 2.5 years in practice is so very important, right? This is one of the most important decisions you will be making in this journey of becoming a solicitor, where you sign your articleship. So, anyone who's in the mindset of giving these examination, who wants to pursue these examination, and who are right now about to sign articleship, the questions that I think you should ask yourself and ask your employer is what kind of matters will be given to you? What are the teams that they have? What are the fields that they work in? Those are the important questions that you need to ask. Whoever's signing the articleship, you're too young, right? Regardless of your age, you're too young to restrict yourself to one field. You may like one better than the other, and that's completely all right. But the next 3 years of your life, right, you have to completely understand is a journey towards becoming a solicitor. Your certain decisions will have to be made keeping in mind that I have to study for these papers. So, what is the best course that I can do when I am practicing, right? So be sure that you are not restricted to any one kind of field. Whichever it is, do 6 months in each, do 1.5 year in litigation or maybe in transactions, however you want to go about it, however the firm allows you to. I got really lucky. I got to do a lot of transaction, a lot of litigation. Even though companies is more of like a corporate matter, I got to dabble into companies, into IBC. There were opinions that we have to give on income tax. So you get to, when you get to practice a little bit of everything, you'll understand why it's so important when you're studying for your papers. Because when you're studying for your papers, right, you'll realize that everything that you practiced in your matter comes to you so easily. You understand those topics so easily compared to something that you have never touched before. So I would recommend and suggest that that's something that you do very sincerely. Just don't take up any firm that's offering you an articleship. Do your due diligence, understand what kind of practice they do, be very familiar with your syllabus, understand what are the papers that you have to give, see if that aligns with what you're studying and what you're practicing. And if they come together, there's nothing like it. That's the best thing you can do. Now, the second most important thing, question that I get from most students who are now in their articleship and you're already scared, that what can I do? What can I do in my 2.5 years? There's not much you can do. That's the simple answer. I cannot advise you to start studying from day one. It'll be impossible for you to remember anything you've studied. So, the two things that you can do, right? First, when you're practicing your matters, right, you will be uh, dealing with certain sections under certain acts, right? Like I said, once you're familiar with your syllabus, you'll know that okay, this act is under my syllabus, right? I have to study these sections for my exams as well. So when you're doing your matter, right, you can note down the sections that you've practiced, you can note down the judgments, and probably make a separate book for it, right? You're practicing your matters, but at the same time, whatever you're practicing, you can note it down so you don't have to go through all your matters when you're studying. You know, this is my book of all the matters where the syllabus was asked, right? Or the syllabus I've practiced, basically. The second thing you can do is be up to date with the judgments. So, how, if all of the article clerks, I'm sure you have gone through the question papers, they will ask you judgments, right? But they won't ask you judgments out of the blue. If they're asking you judgments, they'll be from your period of articleship. So it will be from the 2.5 years that you have put into practice, right? It will be, and they don't even ask you judgments from the last 6 months. It's only from the 2.5 years that you actually put into practice, right? So in these, because you cannot sit down and study, firstly, you just won't have the time, right? Practice, and then if you're in college, you have to do your college studies or extracurriculars, mooting, debating, writing papers, whatever it is, right? You don't have the time to sit down and study, which is understandable. I don't even think it's necessary, right? What you need to do is pay attention to everything that you're practicing, sincerely be a part of your matters, right? Let me tell you, the 2.5 years of my practice had such an important role to play in my studying process, right? You cannot just one day get up and give these exams. All of the 3 years are very essential to giving these exams, right? So first, pay attention to the sections, the matters, understand what the matter is about, understand where the section is being applied. Second, judgments. Judgments will not be limited to the matters that you're practicing or the matters that come to you. Judgments will be throughout the syllabus, right? Because judgments will come for all of the papers, and that's the bare minimum you can do in the 2.5 years. It's good to be updated with judgments. The best thing, the habit of reading judgments is a good habit. So inculcate that even if you're not giving these examinations, a great habit to have. Keep reading judgments. The reason why you should keep reading judgments is it is when you start understanding how the section is applied, what are the controversies with regards to the sections and how they are dealt with. And that helps you in understanding a section, that helps you in understanding how you're supposed to go about any particular problem, right? And it's always good to be updated with the law. And this is all recent judgment, so no one needs you or is, advising you to go back in time, go back like 20, 30 years and read all of the judgments. It's from when you sign your articles, right? So start reading judgments. This is the only two things according to prep, right, for your examination that you can really do. There's really nothing else you can do, because you'll be exhausted even if you start studying, and if you have the time, you'll be exhausted by the end of 3 years. The last thing that you need to do within the 2.5 years and right before the study leave is to get all your books in order. When you get your 6 months or 8 months at the end of it, you don't want to be wasting time in doing all of these admin work, right? You ask your seniors, you buy the books, whatever you want to do. You get your books in order before you go into study leave, right? Now we're in the study leave part. This is the third portion. This is the most important portion, right? This will be intimidating for a lot of you when you start studying. But just know that we've all gone through it. We've all been anxious. We've all been overwhelmed by how to give these examination. This is too much. Maybe I can't do it. All of us have gone through it. Everyone who's become a solicitor has gone through it. Don't let it overcome you where you made a decision to not give it, right? Like I said, the journey of these examination is a lot more important than giving the examination. It's the time you put in preparation that is important. A line that every solicitor will tell you, a line that anyone you ask why I should give these examination will tell you, is that when you give these examination, right, you might not know the answer to an issue, but you'll know where to look for it, and that's half the battle, right? So that is very important. When you're studying, when you've put in the time, and if you're sincere and you've put in the time, regardless of what your results are, you are better for it. You know what you've studied, you have understood the law, and once you've come out of that 6 months period, regardless of the results, right, you're better for it. So these 6 months, a lot more important than the exams itself. These are the 6 months that you give it your all, right? I would recommend, if your firm is allowing you, right, take a longer break. Take 7 to 8 months is what I would recommend, right? So now, how to go about it? I don't know if everyone is aware. So if you have to pass these examinations, there are 6 papers, like I said. You have to get 50% enough in each paper to pass the paper. But to pass the examination as a whole, your aggregate needs to be more than 60%, right? In any event, do not prepare for 50% or 60%. When you're prepping for 100%, right? Regardless of what the criteria is. When you're studying, don't try to leave something thinking that I only need 50%, I only need 60%. You're aiming to get that 100%, right? And it's not impossible. Now, the website is down, right? So there's an article clerk group. By the end of it, I don't know if everyone's a part of it. I can share the number of the admin. You have to personally message him. If you're an article clerk, you can join it. You have to personally message him with your name, with the signing of your articleship and your master's name, and then he'll add you to the group. So I'll share that by the end of this lecture. And there are certain, I've made a list of books, right? That when I was giving the papers, I had asked my seniors, I had asked other solicitors, and certain books that I refer to. I've made a list of it. That also a list of recommended books for these examination I'll share by the end of this lecture, right? Now, okay. Now it's for the students who are in their who already signed their articles or who are about to give the examination in the next attempt, hopefully not the April attempt but the November attempt. First thing you will do is sit down. Now you have your books in order, you have your notes in order. You're going to make a schedule. You're going to make a schedule for the entirety of the 6 to 8 months of how you want to go about it, right? And let me promise you that you will not follow it. Because when you're making the schedule at that point of time, you've just anticipated you'll take this much amount of time for a particular subject. But in actuality, it might differ. It might be more, it might be even less. Certain subjects take a lot more time compared to the other subjects. They're not equal, right? But the first thing and the most essential thing you can do, and it will calm you, is make a schedule. Try to follow it to the best of your ability, but you can always update your schedule. You can always reschedule, right? If you aren't able to complete something or you've completed something before time, which is great, right? You change your schedule. Don't get overwhelmed by the fact that, oh, you're not going according to schedule, or your friends are going faster than you, or this is happening, or like Masira said on the lecture that you need to finish the portion and so on, so time I'm not able to do it. It doesn't matter, it's your own speed, right? Whatever works for you, just don't let it overwhelm you. Your timelines will be according to how you study. It will be very different for another person. So first thing, after you've made a schedule, right, I would advise, right, the first read and then 3 revisions. That's studying in total 4 times before the examination is absolutely necessary. That is according to me, right? If you differ, if you think you need to study more, you need more revisions, you can add that in your schedule. If you think, oh, I don't necessarily need to revise 3 times, that's also understandable. You study differently. You can revise it once or twice as you go about it. But according to me, the first read, right, will be very, very slow. It will take the maximum amount of time. This is the time when you read every single thing. You read the barracks, you read the commentary, right? And you try to understand all topics that you've never probably dabbled in before, or you don't understand in the first read. You try to look up videos, you try to do your research, you try to read judgments on it, you can ask your seniors about it. This is the time when you get your concepts clear, right? This is the most important read, right? Because this is the only time you're reading it front to back. Because in your revisions, you won't have that kind of time. This is the time you sit down, you understand. And without scaring you, you have to put in a lot of time from the start, right? What this does, it helps you organize your time later on in the 6 months. If you go very slow right now, you'll panic by the end of it, and it gets overwhelming at that point of time. So from the get go, I'm not saying study for 20 hours out of the 24 hours, but put in substantial amount of time, right? You study for a couple of hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the afternoon, a couple of hours in the night, and it's okay. You can go out and you can do everything. You don't have to cut off everything at this point in your life, which you will have to closer to the examination. But at this point, you can have an activity, go out every weekend. But that does not mean that you just study for an hour or 2 hours at the start, right? From the get go, put in substantial amount of time. Try to follow your schedule to the best of your abilities. After you're done with your first read, and I would recommend try to finish your first read within 3 months. This might sound like a lot for a lot of people, but the 3 months, right, will go on very quickly. And at that point of time, you'll have to probably reschedule your entire timeline. Right? The second read is the first revision. Right? When you start your first revision, you're automatically going to be overwhelmed because you will not remember much that you have studied, and that is absolutely all right. Now, you can make notes twice. I would recommend that you make your notes in your second read, your first revision, basically, when you're revising it for the first time. Because what happens when you're making your notes in the first read is that you don't know what is important. And you then tend to start making notes about every single thing, and that might be time consuming, right? Regardless, I know a lot of people who made their notes in the first read itself because they think it's time consuming to do it in the second read, right? So do as you may, whatever you think. If you think it helps you by writing, you learn better, then write on your first read. But what I suggest second read only because it becomes easier to make notes now that you have an understanding of all of the topics, right? At that point of time, when you're making notes, you'll know what exactly to write and what exactly to leave out, right? That's your second revision. That might take about 2 months. And now that's why I say if you've just taken a 6 months break, right? Now you have only 1 month left before your examination. And that is, I like I suggested, I don't think 2 revisions is enough. Which is why I would suggest take a 7 to 8 month break. Try, then you again have 2 months, you can then do 2 revisions within that period of time. Now the most important thing, right? Why are you making notes and how do you make notes? I would recommend do not take notes of your seniors. They are not helpful because the idea of making notes is that you put your pen to the paper and you have that habit of writing. That's number one. Secondly, if you write something down, you remember better. And the way you make notes, obviously, you're not writing full answers. The way you will make your notes will be in a language that you understand. You'll have abbreviations, you'll have short forms, you'll try to make notes around the topics that are difficult for you. So please make your own notes. You can ask for books from your seniors, but notes are not important. Now, how do you make notes? You're making notes essentially for the final revision. You have your 6 months, you have your 8 months. But when you're giving the examination happens within 2 weeks. You have 6 papers: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You have only 1 day between the papers. So you're essentially making your notes only for that period of time because you will not be able to go through all of your commentary, all of the barracks within that 1 day. Right? Only paper 4 will have 2 days, that's also not enough. So at this point of time, you will only be referring to your notes. So your aim of making your notes is to make it so concise that you can go through the entire portion of that paper within a day. That is the aim of making notes. So again, you failed if you sat down and made notes which are as big as the commentary itself, right? Then there's no point to it. Because the idea of making notes is so that you can go through something in your revision. In the first revision, and the second revision, and the third revision, yes, You will be referring to your commentaries, to your barracks, all of that will happen. But right before the examination, going through the commentary, going through the barracks can be very intimidating, right? And you might not have the time. That's when you will refer to your notes, right? You make notes as you deem fit, right? But they need to be concise. They need to be concise. At no point of time you're making lengthy notes, especially for paper one, two, three, which are really vast. If you anyone who started reading CPC, anyone who started reading Companies or Income Tax Act, right? You'll understand that those subjects in itself are vast. And for you to remember all of that is one thing. For you to revise all of that within a day is a whole nother thing. So you're making your notes for that period of time. So when you're making your notes, keep that in mind. They need to be concise. You can revise your notes, right? You can make the notes once, they might be extensive. And when you're like going through the revisions, you will have an understanding that these are the topics that I understand. I don't need notes for that particularly. So you can then rewrite the notes, or you can change your pen and make them important, or underline whatever is important, so you know when you're studying. Now, okay, just one. Sorry. Okay. Now, okay. How you can give the exams is that you can give all three papers at once, or you can give all six papers at once, or you can give three papers. Right. This is your first attempt. You can't give less than three papers, so you can give anything between 3 to 6 papers. So sometimes you might get overwhelmed after studying that you can't give 6 papers altogether, but you can. Don't. It really is about just putting in the time. Even when you're revising, there might be times when you feel like you don't remember anything. But when you write the paper, when the questions are posed before you, you will realize that you recollect everything. So that's why I say, right? It might be scary, but don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it overcome you where you decided not to give papers. Give the papers regardless. There is no harm in giving the papers. Okay, now one of the most important topics that we'll take is how to write the paper. And that's the most important question that people ask, mostly because there is nothing to show for it. We write the papers, we never get a copy of our papers. So even if a paper is very good, unfortunately, we'll never know exactly what gets you the marks or what doesn't get you the marks. A few tips that for sure will get you the marks is one, know your sections. Okay, when you're studying, know your sections. So very important to, as soon as you get a question, to write the section. Right? You have to also try to correlate one section to another. It can't just be blatantly the section. And you have to explain it. At no point of time do you have to mug up a section. When you're writing a section, you can write it in your own words. They don't expect you to mug up the sections to that extent. Second thing, and the second most important thing, are judgments. Everyone who's given the GLC papers, we've made up our judgments, right? Do not do it at all. If you don't know judgment, leave it. If you know that Bombay High Court in this year has passed so and so judgment, you write to that extent without the name of it. Don't try to make up a name. If you don't know that, but you know some other fact, right? You write that much. The best way to write a judgment is write the judgment, write the year, and write the quote. Mostly, you will limit yourself for these examinations to Bombay High Court and the Supreme Court, right? But at no point of don't try to learn the citation, and at no point of time try to uh, fool the solicitor, because someone who's checking these papers is well versed with the law. It is a solicitor who will be checking your paper. It will be a solicitor who's an expert in that paper, right? So they will know their judgments in and out, and even if they don't know, they have access to SCC to look it up in 1 second. So do not make a fool of yourself, because if you write a judgment which is not really a judgment, it shows the examiner, if they find out that this is not a judgment, you created an impression, and the only way you can create an impression is through your paper. So if you started writing absolute nonsense in the paper, even if the rest of your paper is all right, you give the solicitor that impression that you've written absolute nonsense in your entirety of the paper. So don't do that. But if you write correct sections, you write correct judgments, you are guaranteed marks, right? Very important. Secondly, how do you write a paper? Please remember, right? Everything that will be asked to you will be from a very practical lens. Everything that will be corrected, everything that you write, right, will also be corrected from a very practical lens. No one cares about the length of your answer. It can be as long if necessary, it can be as short if it does the job. At no point do you have to write 10 pages because it's a 5 mark question. Never. There is no rule to writing, so and so pages because it's a 5 mark question, so and so pages because it's a 10 mark question. Sometimes a 10 mark question is a half a page answer because it's a situational. It is 10 marks only and only because it's a difficult question. It's a question where you are required to use everything that you have studied. The judgments, the section, everything comes at play at this point of time. This is why it's a 10 mark question. At no point that means that you have to write 10 pages, right? Time management is one of the most important things. What people tend to do, these papers are definitely lengthy. Just give me 1 minute. Sorry about that. Time management is one of the most important things, right? I would recommend you have to write at least one paper. If you cannot write one paper, try writing answers. Whatever answers that you think are important, try writing them down. A lot of us lose that touch with writing papers. So it's very important that you put your hand to practice. Okay. Secondly, there is not a particular way that the paper is always set, right? But once you get the paper, the most important thing that you have to do is understand how much time you'll give to each question, because you have to attempt 100 marks, right? Sometimes what we do, we know our answer really well and we write it, and we lose on some 10-15 marks, right? So even when you're writing the paper, you have to know when you have to stop. That is also very important. You might really know one answer really well, but at that point of time, you have to know what do I have to convey from that answer. Try to make it as concise as possible, and then move on, and then write all of your answers. If you think there is something more you can add later, you can always come back to it. But at no point waste your time in one answer. You go through your question paper, see what is objective, see where you can definitely get the marks. You can write those answers first. You can write your lengthy answers later. You can mismatch as you like. So there's not a particular way that you have to follow the question paper. You can write whatever's comfortable, whatever's easy for you. I would recommend whenever there's a true and false, right? Whenever there's a one word answer, definitely write those, and hopefully you know the answer to it, so you will 100% get your marks, compared to something which is a short note where there is a possibility you might not get. uh, if it's a 5 mark question, you might only get 3, even if it is a perfect answer. So something like true and false, something like one word answers, something like situationals, right? Write your situationals, don't leave out a situational. A situational may not have one right answer. Multiple times there are multiple judgments, right? They want to understand how much do you know, how much do you understand, how are you applying your sections to this, right? So that is very important. Never leave a situational, never leave your objective answers. The length does not matter at all. I'll give you an example, right? In paper 4, my paper got over in around 2 hours, right? And in paper 5, they had to give us some 20-25 minutes extra. This is over and above 3 hours, right? It didn't matter because I've scored a 92 in paper 4 and I've gotten a 66 in paper 5. It had nothing to do with how much I've written. I can assure you I've written substantially less in my paper 4 and a lot more in my paper 5, but that does not matter, right? The quality of your answers matter, and that's the most important thing, right? Uh, I would also suggest that you start with what you know best, right? Again, like I said, you create an impression from your paper. So if you started with something you're not very confident about, you have to understand that that will create an impression, even if you've known the answer really well. So start with everything that you know best. Also, it gives you a confidence boost. When you're starting to write an answer that you know really well, you will flow through the rest of the paper. Compared to if you start with the struggle, you have now stuck your mind to that one question that you didn't know. You might know all of the other answers, but now you're just sad about that one answer that you didn't know, and you're unable to concentrate on the rest of your answers. So, very important, go through the paper. I would suggest don't waste too much time in going through the paper. Go through the paper once in within 2 minutes. Understand what the question are. Understand what the length of the question are. There are certain true and false. There are certain one-word answers, situational. Let me figure those out first. Then I'll write the lengthy answers. You can go about it this way, right? Now, we finished all of it. Certain advantages also I've gone through, right? The most important thing about giving these examination is the study process. Remember that. Remember that. Don't try to, play smart when you're trying to study. These examination is all about sincerity and giving your time. And I can assure you that if you put in the time and if you put in the work, you will pass these examination. A mindset that you can have, right? And this depends on what kind of a person you are. It might be intimidating, or it might be motivating. But the mindset that I had is that this is my only shot. You get multiple shots. You get you can attempt this paper 6 times, right? But if you keep the mindset that this is my only shot to crack these examinations, you will put in more time. From the get go, you don't have to, leave all your social life and everything. But there is a certain point during your break where these become a priority in all respects, right? At that point of time, you have to give in a lot more time. But you also have to understand that if you're doing it only once, and if you have that mindset that I only have to do it once, you can actually complete it. You can finish all 6 papers in the first attempt, and you can do extremely well in all 6 papers. It is it is not something that is unachievable. You can do it. You just have to put in the time and you just have to put in the work, and you are definitely going to pass. I am going through my notes, and I think I've completed every topic and every question that I thought was important. So what we can do now is, so the 4 things that I would request the association to share is the notes that I've sent. So I have shared the syllabus, I have shared the recommended books, and there's a guidance note and the BILS rules that were uploaded on the BILS website, which does not work anymore. So I don't know if all students would have access to it. So you can share it in the chat right now with all of the students. So these are the 4 things that I think were necessary. You'll get, that also gives you a very comprehensive idea about what these examinations are, how to go about it, and all of mostly everything that I've covered. And if there's anything more, that will be helpful. But what we can do now is we can go ahead with the questions if there are any.
Uh, Hi, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
Firstly, thanks a lot. It was a very informative session. So
Thank you.
really appreciate all the knowledge that you gave us. Um, so coming to the question, basically I am in my first year of 3 year course. So what I wanted to understand from you was a couple of things. Obviously, like you said, we can give the examination only after 2.5 years of articleship. So, at this point of time, when I'm looking at doing internships starting second year, is articleship of a solicitor an alternative or a substitute for a normal internship that a lawyer or a law student would do uh, during his legal education? And B, if it is so, then do we just need to get some courtroom internships and then should suffice to get into a solicitor's firm?
Uh, okay, so there is no prerequisite to an articleship. The prerequisite will be to do giving the examination. So I understand you're in the first year. So for the 3 year course, you can sign your articleship from the second year, and for the 5 year course, you can sign your articles after the 3 year the PLS degree. So in your fourth year, you can sign your articles.
Right.
Now you can either do internships, which is the whole different side of it, or you can sign articles. When you're signing articles, the only drawback would be that you will not be able to get different forms where you intern. But the plus side is if you're an article and if you stick around for 2.5 years, even during your study period, right? In the sense that in the 2 years that you're still in college, right? You are treated differently than an intern, where you've been given more responsibility, you've been given more matters, right? So those are the benefits of signing an article when you're in college itself.
Okay, so basically, as a mentor, I just wanted to ask you. So at this stage, I'm a little confused between either litigating or international arbitration or international taxation. So these are broadly the areas that I'm looking at. So would you rather suggest that I take up an articleship at the end of I mean, at the beginning of my second year, or would you suggest to do, a conventional internship and then maybe at the end of the second or the third year join in architecture?
If you are confused, the best way to do it is practicing in the fields that you're confused about. If you're confused about litigation or international arbitration or international taxation, find out firms that do this and try to dabble in all of it a little bit. Once you're certain of what you want to do, then you can sign your articleship in your third year or even after you've graduated. I signed my articles after I graduated, which is why the 2.5 years that I practiced for the entirety of 2.5 years as an associate. Rather than, students who become article clerks, they have to keep going on study break and they have to keep taking breaks, which, which is a bit which is a drawback in my opinion. But at the same time, if you're confused, the better way to do it is to intern in the areas that you're interested in, and once you are clear about what you want to do, then you can go about signing your articleship, because you can sign your articleship even after you're graduated.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Right.
Can I speak?
So yeah, go ahead.
Madam Masira, I just wanted to know where I can do my internship. Can I do it at the uh, at a justice's office, right? Or a firm? Is it possible? I've seen photos where and also posts where people have done clerkship at justice office. Is it possible to do that?
Okay, so clerkship is different than article clerkship, right? Clerkship is something that you do under justice itself. Article clerkship, if you are not familiar with how these exams work, I'm sure a lot of y'all will be familiar with how the CA exams work, right? The prerequisite to giving the CA exam is also a 2 year articleship. So this is, you can compare this articleship to the CA articleship. It's not the same as clerkship under a justice. So if you want to join an if you want to join under a master who's already a solicitor, he can be any solicitor. He can be practicing independently, he can be a partner at a firm, whatever practice, but he needs to be a solicitor. And the requisite is he needs to be a solicitor standing for 5 years.
Madam, one more question. The papers are different for every batch. For like, let's say, if I said the following batch, my question paper is supposed to be different than somebody, let's say, who is joining later. Is it true?
Yeah. Your question papers will be different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Hello,
ma'am.
ma'am. Hello,
Hello.
ma'am.
Hello.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good
Ma'am,
afternoon.
thank you very much for the session, ma'am. It was very insightful. Ma'am, my name is Oves. Ma'am, my question is that period of study leave different from firms to firms? Because
Yes.
I've been to firms, so the firm, they were told that we vary from the period of study leave. For example, in one firm, I was told that you will get a 6 month. In another firm, I was told that if you join as an associate, then we won't give you the study leave because since you will be under a contractual obligation with us.
It differs firm to firm, definitely. If you're joining as an article clerk, 6 months is something that everyone will give, right? Not giving even 6 months, I haven't heard of it much. But if you are certain about giving these examinations, something I'm sure you can negotiate, that I will be working for 2.5 years, but in the last 6 months, I will be studying. Obviously, you won't be paid for it, right? That's one thing. You cannot be expecting pay in the 6 months that you won't be working. So it is something you can negotiate. Definitely, getting more than 6 months is not a policy. It's not even mandated really by BILS. So it is something, if your firm is kind enough, which my firm was, to give me, a couple of months extra over the 6 months, which is really helpful if your obviously everyone's intention is to pass it in the first attempt in itself. So I would recommend negotiate that. It might be difficult. It is something that you have to probably put your foot down, that I will be taking so and so months off regardless of what you say. I don't know how it will go down. Have that conversation, see how that goes, but try to get as much off as you can and try to put in that much time directly into studying as much as you can.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
You're welcome. I think there are questions in the chat. uh, I'll just go through the questions in the chat then, right? Uh, how is the role of solicitor different from a lawyer at the Bombay High Court? Like I said, right, I started with this. There's nothing in that sense that you can do extra, an additional thing that you can do that probably someone else who is a lawyer can't do, right? Where you stand apart is knowledge, and that's the most important thing. The two things that you get out of these examination is knowledge and recognition. At the same time, you might argue that if you practice for 3 years, you can gain the same thing, which is fair enough. This is this is a very good examination, definitely for students of Mumbai University. We're all GLC students. We know how much we've studied. We know how these papers we've given were. They were extremely easy. We've not put in any time or effort. That's in contrast to that, these papers are extremely tough. It puts you in that state of mind of how to tackle questions, how to understand a section, how to read judgments. It gives you an edge over anyone who is a peer, right? Who is a colleague. And that is the most important. You stand out in knowledge. And honestly, that's one of the most important things if you want if you want a successful career in law. So yeah, the second question, any particular paper pattern, how to write an answer, any good format. Okay, so I covered this, right? There is no particular paper pattern except for certain papers. Like if you see paper 3, 50 marks is for SEBI and competition, and 50 marks is for income tax. Again, if you see paper 5, there are 4 different acts, right? In that, each of them will be 25 marks. But in that 25 marks or in that 50 marks, how the questions will be distributed is unknown. That's something you just have to prepare. It will either be just 10 markers, it might just be all 1 markers, it might be a mix of all, you can never predict that. And how to write a paper, I've gone through the entire bit of how to write sections, judgment, time management, quality over quantity, right? That's probably the gist of it. So I hopefully that answers your question. The next question that we have is, in your professional opinion, for someone looking to practice admiralty law in Mumbai, would you recommend pursuing an LLM from a reputed international college or focusing on prepping for the solicitor's examination locally? Which part do you believe would better equip an individual for success in this specific legal field within the Mumbai context? Right. Okay. So that's a good question. Particularly, there is no subject as either we don't have maritime law, admiralty law in the portion. However, like I said, you cannot practice one field without knowing the other fields, right? Regardless of what you're doing, whatever you're pursuing. If you're pursuing your career in Bombay and you're certain you're going to be here, solicitor's examination is a go-to. I would definitely recommend. Right. At the same time, my friend who is pursuing maritime law ended up doing an LLM instead of solicitor, and that is helpful as well. So you can go through either route, but at the end of the day, when you come back to Bombay, I think doing a solicitor's is a better way forward. But even if you want to do an LLM for admiralty law, I think that's a good way to go. So you'll have to sort of decide on various other factors, uh, like revenue, right? If you want to put in that much amount of money and time into an LLM, which is a year compared to year, you'll be taking a break for 6 months. So you're away from the court. You're a lot of law, a lot of recognition comes from face value being around. So whether you're able to take that break, whether you get into a good college compared to a solicitor's examination, there are no prerequisites for the same. So you probably have to take all of that in mind. In an academic sense, I think both of them will benefit you. So I think you'll have to take the other context into mind. Right. How does one be acquainted with judgments for the subjects which are not the practice area dealt with during articleship period? Yes. So how you can go about it is you can get a subscription to live law, or you can go through SEC important judgments comes over there. Bombay High Court website in itself, right? They have reported judgment. They have a search tab now. Amazing. You can go through the judgments over there. You could just keep reading. Just keep reading. Various platforms right now, right? You have live law, bar and bench. They not even if you're not just reading the news, right? You're probably even reading those articles that come important judgments in this particular subjects. You can look it up. There are various platforms. I feel like if you Google it, right, you'll get various platforms. But a good habit would be to go through the Bombay High Court website or go through SEC online and go through the judgments from there. Go through like particular subjects and you can go through judgments from there, right? And it is very important. Let me just for one more time like let you know that so many times in the question paper it is the judgments that you practice that end up coming in the paper, because it won't be vague judgments, it won't be ridiculous judgments, it will be judgments that are very contemporary, very hot topic for that point of time. In our arbitration paper, if anyone practicing arbitration, you would realize NN Global has been a very hot topic for a very long time. That came in the paper. So it won't be absurd, it won't be obscure, right? It will be something that if you're practicing, you will understand that these are the important judgments, these are not important judgments. Just keep a habit of reading those judgments. Be a part of discussions. Have a group with your friends where you discuss judgments. I had that. That was very helpful. If you have peers who are giving the paper at the same time as you, create a WhatsApp group, discuss judgment, discuss papers, that y'all can motivate each other. If one person finds a judgment, they can send it to another person. The best habit to have is read one judgment a day, right? You all can either by the end of it get on a call for 10 minutes, discuss it. If y'all are in the same firm, discuss it before you leave for home. But one judgment per day, if you do it for your articleship, great way to go ahead, right? Okay. Can the committee please share the four resources provided by ma'am? Oh yes, please share it. Could you expand more on the advantages of being a solicitor, and if you would recommend starting with the article clerkship after graduating rather than a student? Would being a solicitor be beneficial for someone looking to work in the corporate field? I personally know people who are in the corporate field who've given these examination and it's been beneficial for them. Again, right? You cannot practice one field without knowing the rest of the fields. Law is not isolated in any sense. You have to know everything, and the more you know, the better you are for it, right? So always, if you're practicing in Bombay, even otherwise, right? It's such a knowledge-based exam. If you're not that hungry for the title, right? The exams in itself puts you in a position where even if you're not recognized for it, right? Like I said in the start itself, the exam, the results, the title is not as important as studying for it is. You're going to be pushed to the deep end, right? You've been given all of these books, and once you get the books, you realize one paper and the commentary is this big, and just looking at it, you'll be like, I can't do it. But trust me, I thought the same thing and I could do it. So you are no different. Even if you are scared or intimidated by it, it is something that will, make you more confident. You will know how to tackle questions, you know how to read law, you know how to understand an issue, where to look for your research. All of it gives you a benefit with majority. If you're just looking for, those, will I get extra pay, will I be recognized, can I, flaunt it and all of that, maybe not so much. But from an academic perspective, if you want to make a great career in law, right, these are exams something I would definitely recommend you give. The resources will be shared in all the groups post the meeting. Okay. In between AOR and solicitors qualifying exam, which is less riskier as in context of qualifying. Both are very difficult papers, right? So if the aim is to practice in Bombay, the additional benefit is you are practicing in Bombay, but at the end of the day, you can file a wakalatnama in the Supreme Court as well. Both are extremely difficult. Both are different. uh, Neither of them are risky, but they are tough and they both require a lot of time. Uh, you can definitely try giving the AR exam. That's also very tough, and you will have to put in that much amount of time. So whichever in the context of where you want to practice, the only thing is if you are passing the solicitor examination, you get the AOR title uh, as an addition benefit. Okay. So what is the stipend like for an article clerk like these days? There is no fixed stipend, right? It can vary according to who your master is, what firm you're at. If you have signed after you've graduated, I was paid like an associate and not like an article clerk. So it really depends. Again, this is a firm to firm basis. There is not a fixed amount that they're supposed to give. Yes, they are definitely supposed to pay you, but what they're supposed to pay you depends completely on who your master is. How long after clearing the exam can one enroll as an AOR? The BILS website seems to suggest immediately. You don't have to enroll per se, right? What I understand from it is that you can file a wakalatnama. So at the time of filing a wakalatnama, whatever the prerequisite or whatever the criteria is, right? You can file it and you can fulfill it during that point of time. At the same time, you don't have to give the exam to fulfill that criteria. Can you suggest some good firms where we can complete our article closure? I would suggest any firm that lets you do a lot of different kinds of matters, right? That's something you'll have to go find. Maybe in my opinion, maybe tier ones are not the place to go because they're not that flexible when it comes to changing teams. You might be stuck to one team. I did my articles from IC Universal Legal. That's a good firm. All of the old solicitor firms, those are very good firms. There is Mansuklal, there is DSK. There are a lot of firms that are extremely good, and they have solicitors who are partners at these firms, so they encourage giving the examination. They'll give you that break, they will pay you well, all of it. And they, because they have solicitors, you'll have a community within the firm as well. So all of these firms you can definitely try. um, I think this is the last question. What do you think about signing article clerk with top tier firms or an average firm or sole practicing solicitor? What should we prefer? Okay, which would lead to a more fruitful things. Okay. So like I just said, I think we're covering all of the aspects with this one. Is that find a firm which lets you do a lot of different kinds of practice, right? Not just one thing. In my opinion, again, tier ones are not the place to be if you're signing an articleship. Maybe tier two, maybe a solicitor firm. Try finding firms where the partners are solicitors, where they encourage the examination. At my firm where I signed my articleship, we had a lot of discussions. There are questions that have come in the paper directly, which I've never sat and studied in the 6 months, but I was lucky enough to work with great partners where, because they kind of know how solicitors are thinking, I got to tap into that, and questions have come directly from my matters where I couldn't even think of sitting and studying for those. But because the environment is so good and it's so encouraging, and they're always encouraging you to study, to understand the matter, not just from a perspective of the matter itself, but to understand why the section is this way. They'll encourage you to study, they'll give you the breaks and all of it. So any firm which encourages giving the examination, compared to any firm which tells you you can sign as an article clerk, but we won't give you a break, maybe don't go for those firms. I'm sure they don't have that community and that environment of encouragement to give these examinations. So definitely, just look up firms where there are solicitors and who are as partners, and those firms are good enough. So tier two, or like any mid-sized firm should be good, and definitely you can go for someone who is also independently practicing. That's good as well. Okay, there's another question. Where can we find the past question papers? Unfortunately, you do have question papers till October 2019 on the website, right? However, from October 2019, papers are shared on the group. Let me just quickly put in the number of the admin, right? Of who you can contact. Okay, the name is Priyahas Jani, and the number is 9820601993. Okay, I've put in the number. All you have to message him is that you're an article clerk and that you want to join the group. Your name, your phone number, the name of your master, the name of your firm if you join with the firm, and the commencement of your article date. And then he'll add you to the groups, right? So you can get question papers over there. You can get all kinds of information on the group, right? He's really helpful. So you can write a message to him and he'll add you to the groups. I think we're good with the questions.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
I am Nidhi from Alumni Association. I would like to ask one question on behalf of one of our participants. So, may I go
Mhm.
ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Is the SQE in the UK easier than the solicitor's exam conducted by BILS? And is academic performance should be at the peak to qualify this exam? I've recently shifted to Bangalore, completed my article in Mumbai. Whether I should appear for the solicitor's exam, and as an article clerk, how to balance work and study, and also what routine did the lecturer had for preparing for her examinations. Put some light on judiciary, civil judge exam, and also career as civil lawyer.
Okay, a lot of questions. So first, the solicitor examination. Obviously, there's one that you can practice in the UK as well. Neither of them easy. They have three rounds, as an exam round, interview round, and another round, right? So neither of them are easy. Now you have to understand what your final goal is. If you want to practice in the UK, that would obviously make more sense. If you want to practice in Bombay, this would obviously make more sense, right? That's the first question. Secondly, what my timetable would be like I said, right, if you start you start studying substantially, it'll be very difficult, right? In no manner am I saying that it gets easier at any point of time, but you have to put in the time. In the start, you can go out, and you can do everything. You can go meet your friends on the weekends and so on and so forth. There will be a point, and by recommendation, maybe 2 months in advance before the exams, maybe limit your social outings, limit your social media use. Don't try to waste any more time. The more time you put into studying, the better. I think it'll come naturally to you because of the level of stress. It will come automatically when you leave other things and you will study. But do definitely, try to maintain that balance. Don't engulf yourself into this entire stressful situation of studying. Have a hobby, step out every once in a while, go meet a friend or two, go for a workout, do whatever pleases you, honestly. But take sufficient amount of breaks at the same time. Don't let it affect your studying, and maybe by the end of it you can go a little intense when you're studying. You can probably limit your social gatherings completely, restrict them completely, and that's what I did. And paid attention to studying because, like I said, it is something you do once, hopefully. And if you have that mindset that I don't have to repeat this and I only have to do this once, hopefully you'll give it your all, and you will probably only have to do it once. There were a few other things that she had asked. What were the other things? Judiciary exams, completely different, I'm assuming. um, so judiciary is obviously to become a judge, and it is a completely different exam. The other way to become a judge is to become a solicitor. You will, not to scare you, but you probably like sleep very little, and you will be studying continuously. You might have a constant headache. It can be very different. The 2 weeks are very intense, I will have to say. The last 2 weeks gets a lot, and you might have to give up on sleep. You might not talk to anyone for 2 weeks, but that's all right. It's just 2 weeks. You just have to keep studying, right? And keep taking advocate breaks. That doesn't mean go out or anything, but you can always just take some time out, talk to your family, come back, study. Just maintain a healthy mindset. Don't let it get to you, because you won't be able to study if you're too scared. You will not understand what you're studying. It is hectic, but at the same time, you don't have to put that much pressure on yourself. It is something doable, completely doable, if you manage your time really well from the start. And I can tell you, I didn't. I unfortunately didn't have anyone explaining how to do everything to me. But even if I couldn't manage my time from the very first day, you are able to complete these exams. You are able to study everything. So now, because I don't know if anyone started studying, but even if you're just starting to study, manage your time really well. Put in the time from the first day, right? So it does not get overwhelming by the end of it. Just put in the time, put in the effort, and you will be good for it. There are more questions coming in. One practice or thing which helped you, in your opinion, for clearing the exam in the first attempt. um That I don't think there is one thing. I definitely think that the 2.5 years of my practice played a very important role in how I studied and how it helped me in clearing the examination, especially because I did my articleship after I graduated. So I got the full 2.5 years in practice without any breaks. That is very helpful. Is that you put in the same amount of work when you're working and the same amount of hard work when you're studying, right? It helps. Anything that you put out will always be uh, you'll always get a reward for it if you're putting that much work in in your work or in your studying, right? You will see the benefits of it. There's another question. Since the subjects that I plan to engage in are covered under the solicitor's examination, would I be at any disadvantage if I go for an article clerkship as opposed to a conventional internship, given that I'm planning to work as a counsel? If you're planning to work as a counsel, 100%, I think these examinations will be very useful for you. For counsel practice, you need to have knowledge about every subject. This is as close as you will get, at least at this stage in your life, right? We are all very, you all are either students or you all are just graduated or somewhere around that time where gaining that much knowledge this soon at this early age will be very difficult if just by practice, because even if you've joined a firm, even if you're practicing under one person, they will have their limitation with the kind of matters that they get, that the matters that they entertain, right? So the best way to learn and learn quickly, in my opinion, would be to give these examinations. Definitely, if you want to do counsel practice, a great route to take to sign your articleship, start studying, give these examination. It's a great way to get into counsel practice.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay.
Uh,
Yes.
so I hope everyone has asked their questions. That was quite intense question answering round that went on. Um,
Yeah.
so if there are no more questions, we the Alumni Association Students Wing would like to conclude the session with a thank you note. So we started in the afternoon. It's already evening. So once again, good evening, everyone, and heartfelt thank you to Ms. Masira Shaikh for that incredibly insightful session on the solicitor's examination. Your guidance today has been invaluable, and I'm sure everyone here feels more equipped to tackle the challenging examination of the BISF. Your session today has equipped us with the knowledge and strategies to confront the challenge head on. We all know that solicitor's examination is no small feat. As Nelson Mandela wisely said, that education is the most powerful weapon which can use to change the world. The knowledge you have imparted today is a powerful weapon in our arsenal, and thanks to you, we feel well armed and prepared for the upcoming solicitor's examinations. Your session today has helped us discover areas we might not have been aware of, and that self awareness is crucial for examination success. Thank you once again, Ms. Nasira Sheikh, for your time, expertise, and for sharing your insights in such a clear and engaging manner. We are all incredibly grateful for this opportunity to learn from you. We will use this foundation to have continue diligently and for preparing for the exam. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really hope I've helped and given you enough information to, make an informed choice. So thank you for having me. This was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We would
Bye,
just
guys.
request you to be there for 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay,
And
okay.
we thank all the participants to join for the meet. You all can leave. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. That was an insightful session. It wouldn't have been possible without the help of the junior core members as well, all the members present right now. And it was very kind of you to accept the invitation at the